Hello everyone, batching into today's second video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days. For today's second video, which will take us to around the 6th, 7th of February. So we're heading in towards the end of the first week of February with the week to 10 day video update time frame now. We'll have a look at what's happening in the stratosphere as well to start off with over the Arctic and the North Pole. That's increasingly a focus of the videos at the moment. And at the end of the video, have a look at CFSV2 for the next 4 weeks as well. So quite a bit to be getting on with. The first video up today was Snow Watch. So yes, we've got our first Snow Watch of the winter done and dusted. So it's been a long time coming. 27th of January for the first Snow Watch of the winter is very, very late indeed. I don't think we've ever been this late with our first Snow Watch. There will be a little bit of snow around, not for everybody by any means. It's going to be primarily Scotland, Northern England, a little bit for Northern Ireland, possibly a little bit for Wales as well, but particularly over high ground. And for a covering of snow, I think we're going to have to go out to the far north of England and into Scotland tonight and into tomorrow morning. Quite icy as well in places tonight and tomorrow morning as well. So if you want to know what's happening in Snow Watch, have a look at Snow Watch. Was released a couple of hours ago. Right then, let's get on. We're going to start off with the current temperature at 10 HPA over the North Pole. This is from the JMA. So the grey line is the trend for the year, and we can see that at this point of the year, the temperature at 10 HPA in the stratosphere over the North Pole should be lifting up. It should be getting increasingly milder. The trend is upwards with the temperature at 10 HPA from now right way through to the summer, where it tops out in the middle of the summer and then starts to drop again in towards the end of the summer and the beginning of the autumn. The black line shows where we've been through this season with the temperature at 10 HPA starting off in September. Overall, it's been cold at 10 HPA. It did go a little bit milder than average, a little bit warmer than average just at the end of November, but since like early December, it's been really colder than average throughout this winter. A few days ago, though, we did get, well, up to yesterday, we did get this up to average, but in the last few hours, it's dropped down again a little bit. It's now a little bit colder than average, but not as cold as it was earlier on in the winter when we was way down here around minus 18 at 10 HPA. Overall, the temperature at 10 HPA is still rather colder than we would expect at this point of the year. However, we go a bit lower down to 30 HPA. That's a bit nearer the troposphere. That's how things are looking. So again, same idea. The grey line is the trend line. The black line shows where we've been for this season. So around, again, the end of November into the beginning of December, the temperature at 30 HPA did go a little bit warmer than average when above that grey line, but then a real crash around the middle of December saw the temperature going very, very cold under minus 80, and we stayed with that very cold stratospheric temperature really from the second half of December into like the middle to latter part of January. However, in the past few days, it has also started lifting up a little bit, similar to what we saw at 10 HPA. The temperature has lifted up at 30 HPA as well. Still colder than average, though, you'll notice. It hasn't yet got back to the grey line, hasn't got back to average. So temperatures at 10 and 30 HPA are still a little bit colder than average, although not as cold as they were earlier in the winter, but still overall temperatures are quite cold at both 10 and 30 HPA, telling us that the cold, the strong polar vortex, which is partly driven by these very cold temperatures in the stratosphere over the Arctic and the North Pole, that strong polar vortex is likely to continue for the time being. We've been talking about the chance of a sudden stratospheric warming. That's where the temperature lifts up by about 50-60 degrees in 2 or 3 days. Let's have a look at the latest. So this is from Meteorology.fr. This is the GFS forecast for 10 HPA for the next couple of weeks. Where we've got these blue colours, these are the cold temperatures over the Arctic and over the North Pole. There's a slight warming beginning to appear already over Russia and Siberia with those green colours. Let's run through and we see that this intensifies in the next few days. This is not a sudden stratospheric warming. A few people are contacting me saying, are we having a sudden stratospheric warming up to the 1st of February? This is not a sudden stratospheric warming. It is quite a significant warming of the stratosphere, but To me, it falls just a bit short of the sort of temperature that would be required to call this a sudden stratospheric warming. It is lifting up quite significantly, though, for that temperature. So it's a warming of the stratosphere, quite a significant warming of the stratosphere, but a bit short of what I would classify as a sudden stratospheric warming. And it's over, up to the 1st February, it's over Russia and Siberia. The Arctic and the North Pole itself remains with those blue colours, which are the cold temperatures. Now, as we go through the opening days of February, that intensifies a little bit more. So that's very, very close there, on the 2nd of February, very close to being classified as genuine sudden stratospheric warming. And then into the 3rd of February, we see this area of warmer temperatures beginning to move over towards Canada from Siberia, beginning to push over towards the Canadian side of the Arctic. That's beginning to start to displace these blue colours out of the Arctic a little bit. So we are moving towards a displacement of the polar vortex at its roots in the Arctic and over the North Pole itself. Let's see what happens as we run up towards day 10. That's how we look. So we keep these this warming of the stratosphere going again from Siberia, eastern Siberia, over towards the Canadian side of the Arctic. We've got those green yellow colours displacing these blue colours over towards our side, the Greenland Scandinavian side of the Arctic. So a bit of a displacement of polar vortex at its roots taking place between, say, days 5 to 10. Moving into the acceleration of this GFS run, so that first warming begins to start to weaken over eastern Siberia and Canada. That's beginning to weaken down a little bit. But as we go towards the very end of this GFS run, again, we've been seeing this quite a bit over the past few model runs of the GFS. We start to see a secondary warming gathering pace over Russia. So it's having another go at producing a second warming, and that one, maybe that one will be the genuine sudden stratospheric warming as we head towards the middle of February. This is for the 12th of February when this secondary warming is taking place. Again, it starts actually sort of in the mid-latitude. It starts kind of like over eastern parts of the Mediterranean, but it very quickly pushes northwards in towards Russia, and that looks quite significant. So maybe as we go up towards the middle of February, that's when we will get a genuine sudden stratospheric warming. Things are definitely moving now with the stratosphere, though, over the Arctic and over the North Pole. This is how the ECMWF is looking. So that's the GFS, of course, MetroSeal. This is the ECMWF temperature forecast for 10 HPA in the stratosphere. This is from the University of Berlin. So starting on the 30th of January, which is Thursday, of course. So helpfully, on this chart, we actually see the North Pole itself indicated by this black cross just here. So you can see that the North Pole and most of the Arctic looking cold up to the end of January with those blue colours. This is the warming beginning to take place over Siberia. These sort of orangey colours are just there. As we go to the 5th of February, you can see that that warming has intensified over Siberia and is pushing over towards Canada as well. So we've got these orange colours just here. That's where quite a significant warming is taking place. On the temperature scale, it's around temperature going up around minus 20. So again, I think that's just a little bit short of a genuine southern stratospheric warming, but it is a very significant warming of the stratosphere. You'll notice that the North Pole itself is warming up a little bit as well. At 10 HPA, that's going up to around minus 35, something like that. And these blue colours are again being displaced over towards, there's the UK, for example, there's Scandinavia. So these blue colours, the polar vortex at its roots in the stratosphere, again being displaced over towards the Atlantic and European side of the Arctic. So quite a significant warming taking place at 10 HPA up to day 10. We can't go any further than that, but up to day 10, quite a significant warming taking place. If it was to follow what the GFS is showing, then a couple of days after that, a secondary warming could start to reinforce this first warming, originating kind of like from the Mediterranean, then pushing quickly northwards into Russia. That's what the GFS is sort of flirting with between days 10 to 14. Going lower down to 30 HPA, close to the troposphere. So again, 30th of January, looking very cold with the temperature at 30 HPA, well and truly in those blue colours, so sort of minus 70 or so, cold on average up to the end of January. By day 10, though, we do see signs of a bit of a warming beginning to infiltrate down to 30 HPA as well. Not as intense as it is at 10 HPA. But nevertheless, it looks like going down towards the troposphere, that warming is beginning to have effects on the troposphere over towards kind of Siberia through to Canada. The North Pole itself remains cold on average up to day 10, 5th of February at 30 HPA. And then, of course, we've got to see whether this warming intensifies further as that secondary warming takes place. Things are moving though now with the temperatures in the stratosphere over the Arctic and North Pole. We haven't seen anything like this really throughout winter so far. Generally just kept very, very cold temperatures going, an intense polar vortex throughout this winter. But now we're coming towards, we're not at the end of winter yet, but we are coming towards the late part of the winter, and we are now beginning to see quite significant developments in the stratosphere. I think we'll get a sudden stratospheric warming, a genuine sudden stratospheric warming at some point through February. It will be a case then of when it happens and how quickly, if any, effects we get in the troposphere. It could set up a cold pattern for spring, this, or for the early part of spring, more so than the winter, because there is a time lag between getting a sudden stratospheric warming and having an effect on the troposphere. Sometimes it can happen quite quickly, sometimes it can happen within a week or two, but you start to get the first effects. Sometimes it can take a month or 6 weeks for there's any notable effect within the troposphere. And sometimes you don't get a tropospheric response at all, so there's going to be a lot of questions about this warming of the stratosphere if it does occur. And it'll be a case of monitoring the tropospheric response and seeing when, if any, tropospheric response begins to occur. This is from weatheriscool.com. Again, we've been looking at this quite a bit just lately. This is indicating the strength of the zonal wind. So I had a very, very strong zonal wind through this winter. Excuse me. So back in the middle of January, the zonal wind was virtually at near record levels. This again tells us that the polar vortex is very, very strong. Very intense polar vortex indeed. That polar vortex is decelerating, and that's happening without any sort of sudden stratospheric warming, really. I think just purely the case that the zonal wind got so very strong, the polar vortex got so strong back in the middle of January, but there was nowhere left for it to go other than to weaken. So that's where we are right now. It is still stronger on average. This black line is sort of betrayed. That's like betrayed. So the zonal wind should be weakening at this point of the year as the temperature begins to warm up in the stratosphere over the North Pole and the Arctic, so the zonal winds begin to weaken. So we are in a weakening phase for the zonal winds, and so therefore, despite the deceleration that we're seeing from this near record breaking level back in the middle of January, zonal winds are still stronger than average. In a few days, though, the GFS ensembles are forecasting that the zonal winds will return to average, and then by the beginning of February, through the first week of February, the zonal winds may even go a little bit weaker than average. The other coloured lines are from the CFS V2. Now, yesterday, there's 4 CFS V2 members here, 3 pink and 1 blue. Yesterday, all 4 members of CFS V2 were sending the zonal winds into reverse. So this 0 line just here indicates when the zonal winds are going into reverse. If the zonal winds go underneath that 0 line, then the zonal winds have gone into reverse, essentially, and that's something that tends to happen after a sudden stratospheric warming. Yesterday, 4 out of 4 of the CFS members were going for reversal of zonal winds. Today, only 1 is doing it during February. This is February just here. Only 1, this blue line, is going for a very significant reversal of zonal winds, going down to its -20 line. The other ones, the other 3 pink lines, they do decelerate zonal winds further and go weaker than average, but they don't go for reversal today. So the CFS has perhaps backed away from that idea of a sudden stratospheric warming during February, and now we see that the zonal winds actually going to reverse with like the other with like 2 of the pink CFS members actually going to reverse during March. This one never sends the zonal winds into reverse. That one keeps the zonal winds strong right the way through to March and also to April as well. So 1 out of the 4 CFS members is sending the zonal winds into reverse during February. Another 2 are not doing it now until March, and 1 doesn't do it at all, which is big difference from yesterday when all 4 of the CFS V2 members were sending the zone winds into reverse. So it's by no means guaranteed that we're going to get a sudden stratospheric warming to reverse the zone of winds, but certainly we are into a much more interesting phase now, stratospherically speaking, after just having a really cold stratospheric temperature and intensely strong zone of wind through most of the winter. So we shall keep an eye on what's happening with the stratosphere over the next few days and see how this develops. Looking at weather next week to 10 days, these are the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts from Penn State University. We've got the ECMWF on the top, and the GFS, which we'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars is an area in absolute high pressure and low pressure. I've been moved around by a jet stream running above. Red extrapolates high pressure blue to low pressure. You can see that the ECM in the day 7 to 10 time frame bring this trough of low pressure into northern and eastern parts of Europe. That's winter digging in with the jet stream going southwards into much of northern and northeastern Europe. We're on the periphery of it. We're close to this ridge, which is out to our northwest. So if that ridge was to go any further north and west, then that trough would back into the west of Europe and we will start to pull down very cold northerly winds. As it is, most of the cold with that is to our northeast, but we are very close. We are very close to putting down some really quite cold air there as we come towards the final week come towards the end of the first week of February. One complication is that this ridge still goes on across southern parts of Europe. That's associated with the pattern that we've had all winter, of course. High pressure to the south, low pressure to the north. It looks like heights are lowering around the Azores, so that will be putting this ridge under pressure. The jet stream is trying to move southwards and possibly trying to collapse that ridge. So within the 7 to 10 day time frame, the ECM is having a very good go at setting up a cold and blocked pattern. Whether it would ever come to anything, we can't say because it's in the day 10 time frame. We can't go any further than that with the ECM. But certainly at day 10 or around day 10, the ECM is having quite a good go at setting up a much colder pattern. This is how the GFS is looking. It's quite similar, really. Again, it has this ridge out to the northwest. It has a trough of low pressure extending through much of northern and northeast Europe. Heights are lowering around the Azores as well. We've got some low pressure towards the Azores. So once again, we've got winter digging into the north and northeast of Europe. We're just on the periphery of that. The complication, of course, continues to be this ridge sitting around Spain and the Mediterranean. If you want to get into a cold blocked pattern, you need to get rid of that ridge and send this trough in the Azores through to the Med, send the jet stream southwards as well, move this high pressure northwards and center it somewhere around here, and then the trough of low pressure will back into the west of Europe, and that will open the door to bitterly cold north or northeasterly winds. So it's, again, both the GFS and the ECM are having a go at getting us into a colder and blocked pattern around the end of the first week of February, but until those heights fall across southern Europe, it will be difficult to pull off anything more than a cold snap for us. However, Scandinavia, Baltic regions, Western Russia, where it has been very mild, parts of Eastern Europe too, where it has been very mild through this winter so far, we could be about to see winter digging in those northern and northeastern parts of Europe. For us, we've got to get those heights out of Spain, though, and lower the pressure across Spain and into the Mediterranean. So these are the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. The red line is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Birmingham. Look at Birmingham today. So we're already a little bit on the cool side. We're going to go colder over the next day or so. Actually, we're going to see the upper air temperature becoming quite cold for a couple of days, Tuesday to Wednesday. Then they lift up in the second half of the week and become very mild at the end of week and into weekend. I think we'll be seeing temperatures back into double digits by Friday into Saturday. Early next week, the temperatures fall back again. And then beyond that, we just see quite a lot of scatter, really, as we go through the first week of February and into the second week of February, even, with the GFS ensembles now, this period. Just here, a lot of scatter. I think since yesterday, though, these upper air temperatures have cooled down a little bit. They don't look quite as mild. We have got these ensemble members up here that are pretty mild. But we've got more that are going quite cold through this first week to second week of February. And a couple go really very cold, particularly this one just here. This is plunging us into the freezer. Obviously, that's an outlier, a very clear outlier. But it does plunge us into the freezer, that one, for a little while. And some of the other ones are quite cold as well. I think overall the GFS ensembles have shifted a bit today towards something a bit colder through the first week, or through the end of the first week, and into the second week of February. Precipitation-wise, going to have wintry showers, potentially across the country tomorrow, then drier for a few days until the end of the week. Over the weekend into next week, quite unsettled, possibly going drier through the second week of February though, as things maybe start to get a little bit colder as well. That remains to be seen, of course. Temperature anomalies for the next week, though, are going to be milder than average. So this is from the 27th of January to the 4th of February. It also encompasses the little cold snap that we're going to have, well, we're having like from now through to Wednesday. So that just goes to show how very mild it's going to get at the end of this week and into the weekend. So I think we're going to be seeing temperatures widely into double digits, and I wouldn't be that surprised on Saturday see temperatures perhaps going up to around 14 degrees in some parts of the country. That's 57 Fahrenheit. So it's going to be a very mild temperature anomaly overall, even with this little colder snap we're having at the moment from the 27th of January to the 4th of February. Precipitation-wise, wet and average in the north of Scotland, a little bit wet and average across southern England, drier than average though through central parts of England, Wales, and also Northern Ireland. Quite a bit of regional variation with the precipitation anomaly from the 27th of January to the 4th of February. That's how the GFS looks for Thursday, so we're beginning to already start to move milder air back in from the southwest on Thursday. By Friday, we're well and truly back into those milder west to southwesterlies. Into the weekend, low pressure will come in from off the Atlantic, so it'll be quite unsettled over the weekend with more rain to come. Also some quite strong winds as well, indicated by the tightly packed ice bars, and as I say, very mild, especially on Saturday and into early Sunday, possibly getting a little bit cooler later on Sunday. That's Monday, a week away, so low pressure again down to the southwest, still trying to bring up those very mild southwesterly winds. Tuesday through to Wednesday next week sees a change. The low pressure moves away to the east, a ridge builds out to west of Ireland, and we start to pull in some, not necessarily all that cold, but certainly cooler, sort of west to northwesterly winds. I mean, up to day 10, the high pressures to the west of Ireland, so things begin to get drier, but also quite chilly with the air coming around that high pressure from the northwest. In the more extended range, the 6 o'clock GFS run starts to take that high pressure northwards. So moving into the second week of February, this is Sunday the 9th of February, we're starting to have a go at pulling down some genuinely cold air from the north. Notice how cold it looks across much of northern Europe as well. Winter really digging in across much of Scandinavia, Baltic areas, into western Russia. We saw it on the height anomaly flow chart. It does look as though it gets very cold there through the second week of February. Just on the periphery of it, this high pressure just needs to go a little bit further to the northwest to allow those winds to go into the north or northeast. And in fact, by the time we get through to the end of the GFS run, which gets to the 12th of February, we are pulling in a bit of a northeasterly there. So we really start to turn quite a lot colder through the second week of February. That's how the upper air temperatures look. I mean, this is over 2 weeks away, so it's very, very unreliable. But you can see the change across Europe is quite amazing, really. Look how cold it is across most parts of Europe by the end of this GFS run. If I show you how that compares to like the situation now, so that's the situation now. Very cold in the extreme north of Europe, but most Europe actually looks really mild at the moment. But by the end of that GFS run, it is all changed. Winter has well and truly plunged into much of Europe, and we are just about bringing the -10 surge iceberg onto the east coast. So a big change there, much colder, even for us as we get into the second week of February. It could be an outlier. Of course, it could be going over the top, but certainly that suggests very big changes ahead into the second week of February. GM looks like this. So mild winds returning from the southwest on Thursday, and then over the end of the week into weekend. Over weekend, we keep those mild southwesterlies pumping in across the country. It's going to be a very mild weekend indeed. Early next week, winds begin to turn into the west, so it becomes cooler, but not particularly cold through the early part of next week. and still looking quite showery. Up to day 10 with the GM, which is the 6th of February. High pressure just down to our southwest, low pressure up to the north. If we could roll on any further, you would probably expect this high pressure to push northwards in that direction and maybe start to allow colder air to push down from the north. But we can't go any further than day 10. Up to day 10 anyway, high pressure continues over France, Spain and Portugal. As I say, until that high pressure moves, till it vacates Iberia, it will be difficult to pull off anything other than like a day or so of a cold snap, really just a little cold toppler. And then finally got the ECMWF, or finally for the generic charts, ECMWF, southwesterly winds coming in on Thursday into Friday through the weekend will bring very mild air with them, but also further rain, particularly into the north and the west. Early next week, we gradually start to build this high pressure out to the west, so similar to what the GFS was showing, and we saw it on the height anomaly flow charts, the ridge is beginning to build out to the northwest of the country, much colder air beginning to sink down into Scandinavia and northern parts of Europe. At day 10, that's how we look. So again, we've got the high pressure just to west of Scotland. Deep trough of low pressure is sinking through northern parts of Europe, bringing cold air with them. We're just on the periphery of that again. Notice heights are falling though around the Azores, which means that we also see high pressure beginning to fall, or pressure begins to fall across Spain. So this low pressure could possibly start to move in towards the Med. That high pressure was to push back northwards, then we could back the trough into west of Europe and begin to pull down those colder northern winds. That's how the upper air temperatures look. I mean, at day 10 we are quite cold with -5 Celsius isotherm through the country, and winter really digging in across northern and northeastern parts of Europe. So if we go on any further than that, it's possible that it would send us colder still. We will have to wait and see. But we could be seeing signs of a change here for February, even without any notable warming of the stratosphere occurring first over the North Pole and the Arctic. This is the precipitation forecast based on that ECM run from Precipitation.com. So lots of showers in the south today, wintry further north and into tonight. So there could be a band of snow pushed across southern Scotland, northern England. We'll talk about that on Snowwatch, of course. Into tomorrow, wintry showers mainly affecting western areas, and then a more persistent area of rain or snow possible across Scotland on Wednesday. Thursday we're into milder air with rain coming in from off the Atlantic, and that sets up for quite an unsettled weekend with sort of bands of rain coming and going. That looks very wet there on the 2nd of February, really wet conditions pushing across the country on the 2nd of February. Which I think is Sunday, isn't it? Into the early part of next week, further showers, particularly in the north, a little bit drier down in the south, moving up towards day 10, increasingly dry trend as that ridge is building out to the northwest. So the opening days of February, very mild and quite wet, but then getting drier as we go further into the first week of the month. These are the options on the table within the ECM ensembles today for day 10. Which is going to be the 6th of February from the Icelandic Met Office. So you see 20 members of the ECM ensembles with high pressure, more or less over top of the country, just centred a little bit to our south. Quite dry with that, and a bit on the cool side, I would have thought. 17 have the high pressure up towards Greenland and Iceland, with that trough of low pressure plunging northern Europe into winter, backing into the west of Europe. So that 17, or those 17 options are sending us really quite cold, I think, there at day 10. 14, including the operational and the control ECM run, have the high pressure just a little bit out to our northwest, so we kept on the periphery of that cold northerly plunge, but just about managing to pull it into the east coast perhaps. But obviously this is the coldest option just here, because it takes a high pressure genuinely to Greenland, and it has that trough backing into the west of Europe. So those 17 minority option, but those 17 are the coldest option. This one just here, these 20, the mildest option, and then the 14 we have there, which does include the operational run today. That's somewhere in the middle of the two outcomes. In 2 weeks' time, these are the options that we've got. Gets us to the 11th of February. 15 members of the ECM ensembles with low pressure to the north and high pressure to the south. They're mild and westerly. 14 with a ridge of high pressure extending from Scandinavia through the UK. They're dry and frosty. Another 14 looking very unsettled with low pressure driving in from off the Atlantic, southwesterly winds. And then 8 again with low pressure centred over the top of the country. So the ECM ensemble is actually going towards more unsettled conditions probably through the second week of February. Maybe a bit surprising given what we've seen from the GFS, but there we go. The ECM ensembles are suggesting a return to very unsettled weather in the second week of February. And then finally, CFS-V2, these are 500 millibar heights broken down into week periods. The first week period takes us from the 27th of January to the 2nd of February. The coming week dries in low pressure from off the Atlantic, so it remains unsettled and quite mild in the week ahead. Week 2 looks like that. It's the 3rd to the 9th of February. Low pressure continues around Greenland and Iceland. The high pressure is centred over France and down to Spain. So obviously that keeps us within those west to southwesterly winds. So relatively mild into the second week of February. Week 3 is the 10th to the 16th of February. Westerlies go on with winds remaining off the Atlantic, high pressure to our south. Heights never fall with CFS today. They never fall to the south of us. We remain with that high pressure around the Mediterranean and Spain. And then finally, week 4 is the 17th to 23rd of February. Then the heights are perhaps pulling out into the Atlantic a little bit. Low pressure is still coming in off the Atlantic, but possibly lining up the jet stream northwest to southeast. So that would potentially be turning a bit colder, but would still be unsettled. As the heights, you'll notice, they start to finally lower around Spain and into Mediterranean, and they're pulling out into the Atlantic. So the CFS doesn't suggest anything particularly cold through the first half of February anyway, but it's possibly the shorter range output we need to keep an eye on at the moment, because we're in a bit of a changing scenario here, I think, or certainly the models want to produce a bit of a pattern change for Northern Europe and bring some cold air down into the north of Europe through the early part of February. And while that's going on, it's possibly the shorter range models that we need to keep a close eye on. This could all be a false storm, and it could be that the west-southwesters are just going to carry on into like the first and the second week of February. At the moment, it looks like there's enough there to suggest perhaps a bit of a change, though, through the early part of February. We shall see. And then, of course, the bigger picture is what's going on in the stratosphere over the North Pole. Right, very extended video today. Hope you found all of it interesting and informative. Let us know what you think in the comments, whether you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to give us a like on the video as well, and don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And we'll keep you updated over the next few days about how all of this is developing. That's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.